What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another Hunter's Guide to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. In this video, we're going to be bringing you another endgame build, but this time for the hammer. Now, as always, what are endgame builds? Well, they're builds constructed from some of the rarest armor, weaponry, and decorations in the game. They also feature talismans as well as Krios crafting, but when it comes to the Krios crafting, it's not to the extent where the augmentations featured on the armor are all rare skills. Now, if you find these videos helpful or informative or even entertaining, please consider leaving a like on the video as well as subscribing to the channel, as I try to bring you a variety of builds for a variety of different playstyles. Now, when it comes to the hammer in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, it's a fun weapon to use. However, I've started making builds that steer towards the Switch Charge Courage playstyle, and so with that I present to you a DPS build simply known as the Blast Hammer build. This is a build that features the blast element, but on top of that, it features skills that create blast effects on our hunter, dealing extra damage to a monster. So for this blast hammer build, you'll need the Risen Kaiser horns, Risen Kaiser mail, Flaming Espinasse grips, Risen Kaiser coil, and the Flaming Espinasse heels. For your petalace, go with the Absolute petalace or Demon petalace. Absolute petalace if you want something a little bit more balanced with extra health. Demon petalace if you want to focus purely on dealing damage. As for your talisman, get a talisman with as much attack boost on it as possible. I'm using a talisman that has attack boost at level 3, a point in razor sharp, and a tier 2 decoration slot. As for your weapon, you want to use a blast weapon. I'd recommend using the Devil's Die, which is the Scorned Magnum Marlow hammer. As for the Krios crafting on your weapon, simply go for attack boost increase, and then for the rampage skill, go for the anti-species decorations. And speaking of decorations, you have a fair few to play around with. I've gone for critical jaws to max out crit boost, I've then gone for attack jaws to max out attack boost, flame scale jaws to get the Teostra blessing to level 2, expert jaws to max out critical eye, jumping jaws for a few points in the evade extender skill, charge jaws to max out the charge master skill, tenderizer jaws to max out weakness exploit, blast jaws to max out blast attack, a brace jaw for a point in flinch free, and finally a chain jaw to max out the burst skill. So if you've done what I've done here, you have a build with a raw attack of 414 with a small amount of purple sharpness. You have a blast rating of 49 with 40% base affinity. This affinity can potentially be 90% when you take into account weakness exploit. You also have a strong defense of 863 that is strong against fire, thunder and ice, but weak to water and dragon. As for the switch skills, they're down to personal preference, but I would recommend using the Charge Switch Courage switch skill. And speaking of skills, first of all, you'll have attack boost at level 7. Attack boost is a skill that increases the raw attack of the build, and at level 4 or above grants us a percentage bonus to our raw attack. You'll then have critical eye at level 7, increasing the base affinity of this build. You'll then have critical boost at level 3, which is a skill that increases the damage of our attacks when they crit a monster, but only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental or ailment portion. You'll then have weakness exploit at level 3, which gives us an increase to our affinity when we're attacking monster weak points. Weakness exploit at level 3 can provide us a bonus 50% extra affinity, and with the hammer, as it's a blunt weapon and can knock out monsters, we tend to go for monsters' heads, which for the most part are considered weak points. So we should benefit from weakness exploit quite a lot with this build. You'll then have blast attack at level 3, increasing the blast rating and the build-up of the ailment, allowing us to create more explosions. You'll then have razor sharp at level 3, which is a skill that prevents sharpness loss 50% of the time when we're attacking a monster. You'll then have Charge Master at level 3, which increases the damage of elements and ailments when we're performing charged attacks, and this does apply to the Courage playstyle with the hammer. You'll then have Burst at level 3, which is a skill that when we're continuously attacking a monster, will gradually build up increased raw attack and elemental attack. You'll then have Powder Mantle at level 3, which is a skill unique to the Risen Teostra armor. Powder Mantle is a skill that when we're continuously attacking a large monster, will cause powder to form around our hunter. This starts off red, but will eventually turn blue. When the powder is red, should we take a hit from a monster, an explosion will occur on our hunter, dealing damage to the monster that hit us. But should the powder be blue, when we're attacking a monster with our own attacks, an additional explosion will occur, dealing more damage to a monster. You'll then have Master's Touch at level 2. It would have been nice to get this higher, but Master's Touch is still a useful skill for managing our sharpness, as prevents sharpness loss 40% of the time when we crit a monster. You'll then have Spare Shot at level 2, which is a byproduct of the armor we're using. It's not needed on this build whatsoever, as this is a gunner skill. You'll then have Evade Extender at level 2, which is a useful quality of life skill that I recommend on most builds out there, as it increases the distance at which we dodge and evade. This can also be used to catch up with a monster rather than having to sheathe our weapon and manually run after a monster. You'll then have Teostra's Blessing at level 2, which is a skill that increases the fire attack and blast build-up of a build. You only really need to get this to level 2 in all honesty to get the main benefits from it. You'll then have Spirit Bird Call at level 1, which is a skill that causes random spirit birds to come to our hunter at fixed intervals, reducing the need for our hunter to go out of their way to find the spirit birds themselves. You'll then have Intrepid Heart at level 2. Intrepid Heart is a skill that gives us an additional blue bar above our health bar. This will fill up as we land attacks on a monster. When full, should we take a hit from a monster that would knock our hunter back, the damage reaction will be completely negated and the damage from that attack reduced. Furthermore, as it's at level 2, when Intrepid Heart is activated, an explosion will occur on our hunter, dealing damage to the monster that would hit us, further adding to the whole blast theme of this build. You'll then have Ballistics at level 1, another unfortunately wasted skill on this build as it's a gunner skill. You'll then have Mushroom Mancer at level 1, which is a result and byproduct of the Krios crafting. That allows us to eat certain raw mushrooms, in this case as it's level 1, blue mushrooms and toadstools, to gain some added effects. But it's a skill that's not really needed on this build in all honesty. You'll then have Fortify at level 1, which is a skill that whenever we cut and faint, will come back with increased raw attack and defense. This can be applied to a hunter twice during any one hunt. And then finally you'll have Flinch Free at level 1, which is a result of the Brace decoration that prevents minor knockbacks from monsters and especially our allies. So those are all the essential skills for this Blast Hammer build. Let's move on to the next section where we talk about the Krios crafting. Now, like I've said in many videos, when it comes to the Krios crafting, I try not to get and feature all the rarest possible skills when it comes to the augmentation system. Instead, I try to get additional decoration slots or decoration slot upgrades, as this allows for more customization with our builds. So with the Risen Kaiser Horns, I got an additional tier 1 decoration slot. With the Risen Kaiser Mail, I've got a point in the Fortify skill. With the Flaming Espinasse Grips, I've got an additional tier 1 decoration slot as well as a point in the Spirit Bird Core skill. With the Risen Kaiser Coil, I've got a point in the Charge Master skill, as well as the Mushroom Mancer skill, and a reduction in the Ballistic skill. And then finally for the Flaming Espinasse Hills, I've got a tier 2 decoration slot upgrade, an additional tier 1 decoration slot, and another point in the Spirit Bird Core skill, which to be honest is slightly wasted. But sometimes you don't get a choice when it comes to the Krios crafting. But every build out there features various pros and cons. No build is absolutely perfect. Even endgame builds have various negatives to counter their massive positives. When it comes to this Blast Hammer build, its biggest pro is its damage output. Not only have a decent raw attack, it's also got quite a few blast features that allow us to deal extra damage to a monster, taking them down in a relatively decent time. On top of that, this build also has decent sharpness management. Thanks to having Purple Sharpness, Razor Sharp, and at least Master's Touch at level 2 combined with High Affinity, it means that whilst we may lose our Purple Sharpness at times, we'll rarely dip below White Sharpness. And then finally, when it comes to the pros, is the Powder Mantle and Intrepid Heart at level 2, which gives us a unique and quirky way to play the hammer, as it gives us a retribution element to the build, meaning that when a monster damages us, they'll be punished for doing so. But of course there are cons. Two of the biggest cons for this build is, unfortunately, this build does lack defensive skills. Yes, we do have Intrepid Heart, but for the most part the build is lacking when it comes to defensive skills. And the other con is, unfortunately, this build will suffer a little bit if we're going up against monsters who are immune to the blast ailment. Whilst we can still use this build against monsters who are strong to blast, as it has high raw attack, it's nonetheless something you need to be aware of. So there we have it, that is the Blast Hammer build. As you can see, it's a quirky DPS build for the hammer. The retribution aspect of Powder Mantle and Intrepid Heart at level 2, and adding those extra blast effects to our arsenal, is a nice touch and makes it fun to use. So if you're looking for a different hammer build to try out, I'd recommend this one. But what are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below. And until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you another endgame build, this time for the hammer in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.